They had speed, style, and money, but not even millions could stop what happened next. From Bugattis wrapped around poles to Lamborghinis erupting into fireballs, these luxury car crashes didn't just end in twisted metal, they ended in death. Shocking, graphic, and brutally real, these are the most haunting moments ever caught on camera. Even millions can't buy a second chance. This is 2 hours of most disturbing car crash deaths involving luxury cars. It was April 25, 2002, in La Ceiba, Honduras. Lisa Left Eye Lopez, the famous rapper from TLC, was on a spiritual retreat searching for peace. She was 30 years old and had experienced both success and hardships in her life. After the challenges she faced in her career and personal life, Lisa decided to take this journey in the quiet jungles of Honduras to find clarity and healing. A few weeks earlier, Lisa was involved in a tragic accident. A 10-year-old boy named Bayron Fuentes was hit by the minibus she was riding in, driven by her assistant. Despite their best efforts to save him, the boy passed away. This event deeply affected Lisa. Strangely, the boy had the same last name as hers, Lopez, which made her believe that a spirit meant to take her life had taken the boy's life by mistake. This thought weighed heavily on her as she continued her spiritual journey. During her stay in Honduras, Lisa filmed her experiences with a handheld camera, capturing her thoughts on life, love, and death. These recordings were later turned into a documentary called The Last Days of Left Eye. It revealed a vulnerable side of Lisa that few had seen. Behind her fiery public image, she struggled with past pain, including her troubled childhood and her rocky relationship with her ex-boyfriend, Andre Risson. She had once set fire to his shoes in a fit of anger, but deep down she was seeking inner peace. While in Honduras, Lisa practiced fasting, meditation, and followed an alkaline diet, influenced by Dr. Sebi, who claimed it could cure diseases. She believed this would bring her the spiritual clarity she longed for. Despite her efforts, Lisa couldn't shake the feeling that something dark was about to happen. On the day of her death, Lisa and her friends were driving in a rented Mitsubishi Montero, filming more footage for her documentary. Lisa was driving when she reportedly swerved to avoid a car that had stopped suddenly in front of her. She lost control of the car, which flipped several times. Lisa, who wasn't wearing a seatbelt, was thrown from the vehicle. The injuries to her head and chest were fatal. Of the 8 people in the car, she was the only one who died. Lisa's death shocked the world. Her vibrant energy and talent left a lasting mark on the music industry. TLC had been one of the most influential music groups of the 1990s, and Lisa's unique voice and style were key to their success. Although it was confirmed that Lisa had been speeding, the influence of substances and alcohol were ruled out as causes. It was simply a tragic accident. In the weeks following her death, fans and fellow artists expressed their grief. Lisa's presence left a void that could never be filled. The footage she filmed during her time in Honduras was released in 2007 as The Last Days of Left Eye, offering a glimpse into her spiritual journey and final thoughts. Even after her death, there were lingering questions. Some wondered if her belief that a spirit had mistakenly taken Bayron's life instead of hers was somehow connected to her own death. The fact that they shared the same last name only added to the mystery. These unanswered questions left fans speculating about her final days. Her mother, Wanda Lopez, later filed a lawsuit against Mitsubishi, claiming that the vehicle Lisa had been driving was prone to rollovers. Though this brought attention to the car's safety, the outcome of the lawsuit remains unclear. In a painful twist, photos of Lisa's body were leaked online shortly after her death, causing more heartache for her family and outraging her fans. Despite this violation of privacy, Lisa's legacy has continued to shine through her music and the memories of those who knew and loved her. TLC continued, but Lisa's absence was always felt. Tion T-Boz Watkins and Rosanda Chili Thomas honored their friend in many ways, though the loss was always heavy. To this day, fans still wonder about the mysteries surrounding Lisa's final weeks.
It was September 30th, 1955, and actor James Dean was driving his beloved Porsche 550 Spider to Salinas, California, where he would participate in a car race. At 24 years old, James's star was on the rise. He was young, talented, and beautiful, with an aura of mystery and rebellion that enchanted the public. But James Dean also loved racing, a newfound love that soon intersected tragically with his life and career. Born in Marion, Indiana, James Byron Dean grew up with a restless spirit and a determination to make his mark in the world. He studied drama at UCLA and quickly distinguished himself as a remarkable talent. Filmmakers were drawn to his talent and intensity, which resulted in his breakthrough performance in Elia Kazan's East of Eden. He was one of the most promising actors of his generation and would have possibly become one of the world's greatest actors. But it was not for his passion for speed and danger. By late September 1995, James Dean had just finished shooting a film named Giant and was eager to return to motorsport. He allegedly dreamed of competing in the Indianapolis 500 race in the future. His recent financial success from East of Eden had allowed him to invest in his passion by purchasing a Triumph Tiger motorcycle and a Porsche 356 Speedster. James later traded the Porsche 356 for a faster, better car, a convertible Porsche 550 Spider, which he lovingly called Little Bastard, a name that would remain in history. On September 30th, 1955, James Dean was at Competition Motors in Hollywood alongside his Porsche mechanic, Rudy Wutherich. They intended to get the Little Bastard ready for the Salinas race. At first, Dean planned to tow the Porsche behind a station wagon the whole way to the race. But Wutherich suggested that Dean drive the Spider to Salinas to get more miles and experience under his new car. After Dean gave his okay, Wutherich, Warner Brothers stunt driver Bill Hickman, and photographer Stanford H. Roth left Hollywood and headed north on US Route 99, stopping briefly for petrol. At around 3:30 p.m. that day, Dean was stopped by the California Highway Patrol south of Bakersfield, where he was cited for speeding at 65 miles per hour in a 55 miles per hour. The group headed west on SR 166 SR 33 towards Blackwell's Corner via a well-known route to sports car drivers. Once there, they met with other drivers and departed Blackwell's Corner at 5:15 p.m., heading west on US Route 466 towards Salinas. It was around 5:45 p.m., and James Dean and Rudy Wutherich were driving westward. Their companions were far behind. The incident happened near the junction of what was then known as US Route 466, now State Route 46, and State Route 41. As James Dean drove towards the west, another car, a 1950 Ford Tudor driven by a 23-year-old called Donald Turnipseed, was heading east. When Turnipseed made a left turn onto SR 41, he crossed directly into the path of James Dean's speeding Porsche, Little Bastard. Dean had just enough time to realize what was going to happen. As such, he attempted a racing maneuver to avoid impact, but it was too late. The two cars collided almost head-on. Little Bastard cartwheeled through the air before landing in a gully beside the road. When authorities arrived, James Dean was extricated from the wreckage. He was unconscious and severely injured. His left foot was crushed between the clutch and brake pedals. He had a broken neck, crushed legs, and multiple fractures and lacerations. Wutherich had been thrown from the car, but he was still conscious, suffering from a fractured jaw, hip, and other injuries. The driver of the Ford, Donald Turnipseed, sustained only minor injuries. James Dean was transported to the Paso Robles War Memorial Hospital, where at 6:20 p.m. on September 30th, 1955, James Dean was pronounced dead on arrival. An inquest held on October 11th, 1955, concluded that Dean's death was accidental, and Turnipseed was not found guilty of any wrongdoing. However, the accident would haunt Turnipseed for the rest of his life, and he rarely spoke publicly about it. The news of James Dean's death shocked the world and Hollywood. His most famous movie, Rebel Without a Cause, was released nearly a month after Dean died in a car accident. The film immortalized the actor and helped paint the picture of a tragic hero gone too soon. Before becoming Princess Grace of Monaco, she was Grace Kelly, a hugely successful Hollywood actress revered for her beauty and style. Grace's ascension from Hollywood star to royalty fascinated the world. When her life tragically ended on September 14, 1982, the whole world mourned and waited for the true details of her death to surface. Grace Patricia Kelly was born on November 12, 1929. She has always been interested in the arts and aspired to be an actress. After high school, she relocated to New York City to pursue her ambition. 2 years later, she was cast alongside Hollywood legends Clark Gable and Ava Gardner in a movie. Soon after, she gained the attention of Alfred Hitchcock, who featured her in 3 of his most famous films, solidifying her reputation as one of Hollywood's brightest stars. Kelly met Prince Rainier III of Monaco while filming The Swan in 1955. At 25, she played the role of a princess on screen and soon became one in real life. Their union was the stuff of fairy tales, capturing the imaginations of admirers worldwide. Kelly left Hollywood in April 1956 to marry Prince Rainier and become Princess Grace of Monaco. From then on, she dedicated her life to her royal duties and raising their 3 children. It was September 13th, 1982. Princess Grace and her 17-year-old daughter, Princess Stephanie, traveled to Monaco from the family's country home in Roque-Aigle, France. That morning, Grace dismissed her chauffeur and decided to drive herself because the car was filled with dresses and boxes. But as they drove their Rover 3500 down the winding roads of the Côte d'Azur, Grace briefly lost consciousness. In reality, she had just suffered from what doctors would later call a minor cerebral vascular incident, a stroke-like attack. As such, Grace lost control of the vehicle. She missed a curve and veered off the road, plunging about 100 feet down a mountainside. The car tumbled through the air, crashing through pine branches and rocks before landing in the garden of a house below. Stephanie survived with only a hairline fracture in her vertebrae, but Grace's injuries were significantly more severe. She was immediately taken to the hospital and remained in a coma for 24 hours before being declared brain dead. On September 14th, her husband, Prince Rainier III, made the heartbreaking choice to remove her from life support. Following her death, some claimed that Stephanie, who was underage and unlicensed, had been driving that day, or that mother and daughter were arguing beforehand. Stephanie has denied these allegations, claiming that she was not moving and merely fled the vehicle from the driver's side due to the passenger door being fully smashed. On September 18, 1982, almost 100 million people watched Grace Kelly's funeral. Heads of state, celebrities, and royals attended the ceremony, which took place in the same church where she had her fairy tale wedding in 1956.
It was just after midnight on August 31st, 1997, in Paris, France. Princess Diana had spent the evening with her companion, Dodi Al Fayed, at the Ritz Paris, which was owned by Dodi's father, Mohammed Al Fayed. The couple had recently returned from a vacation on Mohammed's yacht and arrived in Paris the day before. It was a quick stop before Diana planned to return to London to reunite with her sons, Prince William and Prince Harry. After her divorce from Prince Charles, Diana had been seeking more privacy. Her relationship with Dodi seemed like a fresh start, but the relentless paparazzi wouldn't leave her alone. That evening, the media followed them, making it impossible for them to enjoy a quiet dinner. So they chose to eat privately in the imperial suite at the Ritz to avoid the press. Just after midnight, Diana and Dodi decided to leave the hotel and head to Dodi's apartment. They hoped to avoid the paparazzi by sneaking out through the back exit. Henry Paul, the hotel's head of security, drove the black Mercedes S280. The plan was to leave unnoticed, but it quickly unraveled. Henry Paul, who was later found to have alcohol in his system, sped off with Diana, Dodi, and their bodyguard, Trevor Rees-Jones. Only Rees-Jones wore a seatbelt, a small decision that would have major consequences. As they drove through Paris, the paparazzi continued to chase them. Henri Paul increased the car's speed to outrun them, reaching dangerously high speeds. At around 12:25 a.m., the vehicle entered the Pont de l'Alma tunnel at about 121 miles per hour. The car lost control, slammed into a concrete pillar, flipped, and came to a stop. A passing French doctor, Dr. Frédéric Mailliez, saw the crash and immediately stopped to help. The scene was horrifying. Diana was still alive but unconscious, while Rees-Jones was injured but conscious. Dr. Mailliez used a respiratory bag to help Diana breathe as emergency services arrived. By 12:40 a.m., it was clear that both Henry Paul and Dodi Al Fayed had died at the scene. Despite the tragedy, the paparazzi continued taking pictures of the wreckage. 7 of them were later arrested for their involvement. Sergeant Xavier Gourmelon, one of the first responders, recalled hearing Princess Diana's final words, "My God, what's happened?" After being freed from the wreck, she suffered cardiac arrest. Gourmelon performed CPR, reviving her briefly, but her condition was critical. At 2 a.m., Diana was rushed to Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital. Despite hours of surgery, her injuries were too severe. She had suffered major internal damage, including a tear in her pulmonary vein. At 4 a.m., Diana was pronounced dead at the age of 36. The news of Diana's death shocked the world. By 6 a.m., Dr. Alain Pavy, head of cardiology at the hospital, confirmed her passing during a press conference. Millions around the globe were devastated by the sudden loss of such a beloved figure. Prince Charles, along with Diana's sisters, flew to Paris to bring her body back to London. It was a heartbreaking moment, especially for her sons, William and Harry, who were just 15 and 12 years old at the time. In the aftermath, many questioned if Diana had been adequately protected. After her divorce, she had requested reduced security for more privacy, which lowered the level of protection she once had. Some wondered if the outcome might have been different if her security had remained the same. The crash also fueled conspiracy theories, with some questioning if it was truly an accident. However, a British investigation, Operation Paget, later concluded that the crash was caused by reckless driving and the paparazzi's pursuit, with Henry Paul's intoxication playing a significant role. Despite the official findings, many still wonder, what if Diana had worn her seatbelt? What if they hadn't left the Ritz that night? What if Henry Paul had been sober? These lingering questions continue to haunt those who mourn her loss.
Smith, one of the most influential figures of the jazz age, was a force to be reckoned with. She was known as the Empress of the Blues and was revered for her powerful voice and emotional depth. But when her life was cut short in a terrifying car crash, rumors and controversy surrounding her death started swirling. Bessie Smith was born in Chattanooga, Tennessee, on April 15, 1894. She came from a very low-income family. Bessie and her 6 siblings were orphaned from an early age and left to fend for themselves. As such, Bessie took to performing on street corners for pennies. She was a talented singer and dancer. Later, she joined a traveling troupe that featured another blues legend, Ma Rainey, who helped Bessie develop a stage persona. By the 1920s, Bessie's career had taken off. Her soulful voice captivated audiences. She signed with Columbia Record in 1923 and became her era's most popular female blues singer. But when the Great Depression took hold of the United States, Bessie's popularity began to wane. As such, she took up smaller performances in clubs and theaters nationwide, which required her to travel frequently. It was during one of these travels that Bessie Smith's life came to an abrupt end. Bessie and her lover, Richard Morgan, traveled on US Route 61 between Memphis, Tennessee and Clarksdale, Mississippi on September 26, 1937. It was nearly 2 a.m. Richard was driving. There was a slow-moving truck just ahead of them. Richard attempted to maneuver around the car, but he misjudged the truck's speed. This misjudgment resulted in a high-speed side-impact collision. The roof of their vehicle was torn off, and Bessie, who was seated in the passenger seat, sustained horrible injuries. Her right arm was nearly severed at the elbow, and she had extensive crush injuries on the right side of her body. Richard Morgan was unscathed, but Bessie lay critically injured in the middle of the road. That's how the first person on the scene, a surgeon named Hugh Smith, found her. He quickly realized Bessie required immediate medical attention. He stabilized her as best he could, dressing her injured arm with a clean handkerchief, while his colleague proceeded to call an ambulance. Tragedy almost struck again, when another car rushing towards the scene collided with Dr. Smith's parked vehicle, nearly missing Bessie Smith. Eventually, as Bessie's state deteriorated, 2 ambulances arrived, one from a black hospital and one from a white hospital. Because of the segregation laws of the Deep South, Smith was taken to Clarksdale's G.T. Thomas Afro-American Hospital. Her arm had to be amputated, but Bessie Smith never regained consciousness. She succumbed to her injuries that morning. That's when rumors started swirling. Some people claimed Bessie died after being denied admission to a whites-only hospital. Jazz writer John Hammond perpetuated this myth in a 1937 Downbeat magazine piece, eventually laying the foundation for Edward Albee's 1959 play, The Death of Bessie Smith. Dr. Hugh Smith, who treated her on the site, dismissed the claim, noting that no ambulance in that area would have considered transporting an African-American patient to a whites-only hospital at the time. Bessie Smith was buried in Philadelphia on October 4, 1937. Thousands of mourners came to pay their respects to the Empress of the Blues. Sadly, her grave remained unmarked for decades. During those years, her estranged husband, Jack G., thwarted efforts to erect a headstone. In 1970, a tombstone was finally placed on Bessie's grave, funded by singer Janis Joplin and Juanita Green, a friend of Bessie's.
On the morning of February 18, 2023, 31-year-old Giovanni Mendoza Martinez was driving his 2021 Tesla Model S on California's Interstate 680. He had activated the vehicle's autopilot feature, trusting in Tesla's promises of advanced self-driving capabilities. His brother, Caleb, was in the passenger seat. Suddenly, the car crashed into a parked fire truck, leading to Giovanni's death and leaving Caleb with severe injuries. The tragic accident has led to a lawsuit against Tesla, with Giovanni's family arguing that the company misled customers about the true capabilities of its autopilot system. They claim Tesla and its chief executive officer, Elon Musk, promoted the technology as more advanced than it really was, giving drivers a false sense of security. Tesla, however, denies responsibility, stating that drivers must remain attentive and in control of their vehicles at all times. The accident happened in the early morning near the San Francisco Bay Area. Emergency vehicles, including a fire truck, were parked across 2 lanes of the highway with their lights flashing. Tesla's autopilot had been engaged for about 12 minutes before the crash. According to the lawsuit, Giovanni had not made any manual adjustments during this time. No braking, steering, or acceleration. The system failed to detect the emergency vehicles correctly, misinterpreting the scene and failing to react. The Tesla struck the fire truck at 71 miles per hour. Giovanni was found trapped in the driver's seat, while Caleb survived with significant injuries. 4 firefighters at the scene also sustained minor injuries. Tesla argues that the crash was due to driver error rather than any fault in the autopilot system. The company claims that their cars are designed to be safe when used properly, and that drivers are responsible for staying engaged while using the system. Tesla also states that any injuries from the crash were likely due to improper maintenance or use of the vehicle rather than flaws in the technology. However, the Mendoza family and their attorney Brett Schreiber believe otherwise. They argue that Tesla's marketing led Giovanni to believe the car was capable of driving itself safely. Instead of issuing recalls to fix known issues, Tesla has continued to release software updates that do not fully resolve the problem. The lawsuit highlights Tesla's history of overstating the safety of its self-driving features. Between 2015 and 2022, the company received over 1,000 reports of autopilot-related crashes and 3,000 complaints about sudden acceleration or braking. Despite this, Tesla continues to market the technology as near perfect. Musk himself has repeatedly made bold claims about Tesla's self-driving capabilities. In 2014, he stated that drivers would soon be able to travel from a highway on-ramp to an exit without touching the controls. In 2016, he claimed autopilot was probably better than a human driver. Statements like these convinced many, including Giovanni, that the technology was safer than it actually was. The Mendoza family argues that Tesla failed to provide adequate warnings about the limitations of autopilot. They believe Giovanni would have been more cautious if he had known the system's weaknesses. Instead, Tesla's marketing created the illusion of reliability, leading to a preventable accident. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, has been investigating Tesla's autopilot system due to multiple crashes involving emergency vehicles. Over 6 years, 16 such incidents have been recorded, leading to 15 injuries and 1 death. The agency is looking into whether Tesla's claims about autopilot's capabilities have misled consumers. The Mendoza family's lawsuit is about more than just Giovanni's case. It raises broader concerns about the safety of self-driving technology. While the idea of autonomous vehicles is appealing, this case shows that the technology is still developing and can pose serious risks. For now, the lawsuit remains unresolved. The Mendoza family continues to seek accountability, hoping to prevent similar tragedies in the future. Their case serves as a crucial reminder that while technology can enhance safety, companies must be honest about its limitations. Until then, drivers must remain vigilant, no matter how advanced their vehicle may seem. It was a quiet morning in 2022 when 34-year-old Landon Embry set out on his motorcycle for what seemed like an ordinary ride. He had spent years exploring Utah's open roads on his beloved Harley-Davidson. Riding wasn't just a hobby for him, it was something he deeply loved. But this ride would be his last. Landon was known for his kind and loyal nature. As the oldest of 4 siblings, he was always there for his family. He attended his niece's soccer games, supported his siblings, and never hesitated to help anyone in need. Just days before the accident, he had surprised his mother, Sandy, with flowers, a simple but heartfelt gesture. That morning, Landon was riding south on Interstate 15 near Draper, Utah. At the same time, a 2020 Tesla Model 3 was traveling in the same direction with its autopilot system engaged. Tesla's semi-autonomous driving feature is designed to assist with speed and steering, but still requires the driver's full attention. According to reports, the Tesla driver was extremely fatigued and not fully aware of their surroundings. The car, moving at 75 to 80 miles per hour, crashed into the back of Landon's motorcycle. The impact threw him off his bike, and he lost his life instantly. When authorities arrived, they found Landon's body on the side of the road. His family was devastated when police knocked on their door to deliver the heartbreaking news. The crash raised serious concerns about Tesla's autopilot system. The driver told the Utah Highway Patrol that they hadn't noticed Landon before the collision. This raised questions about the effectiveness of Tesla's technology. The system, designed to detect vehicles and prevent accidents, had failed to recognize Landon's motorcycle. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, launched an investigation into the incident. This was not the first time Tesla's autopilot had been involved in a serious crash. In fact, since 2016, the NHTSA has been investigating more than 30 similar cases, some of which have also resulted in fatalities. Landon's accident became the 38th case under federal review, highlighting ongoing concerns about the technology. Landon's family, overwhelmed with grief, decided to take legal action. They filed a lawsuit against Tesla, arguing that the autopilot system was flawed and unsafe. They claimed that the technology had failed to detect motorcycles properly, something that had reportedly happened in previous cases. The lawsuit also focused on the actions of the Tesla driver. Landon's family insisted that the driver should have been paying full attention to the road instead of relying on the autopilot system. While Tesla markets its system as advanced, it is still just a driver assistance tool, not a fully autonomous feature. The case quickly gained public attention. Many people took to social media, expressing frustration over the risks associated with self-driving technology. Landon's close friend, Samuel Case, shared his anger online, saying that his friend had lost his life because of a system that wasn't ready for real-world use. Landon's death was not an isolated incident. Tesla's autopilot had been linked to multiple crashes, and experts were beginning to question whether the technology was truly safe. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration had opened several investigations into similar accidents, including 3 Tesla crashes in just 1 month. The problem seemed to be particularly concerning for motorcyclists, as Tesla's system reportedly struggled to detect smaller vehicles. As the lawsuit progressed, Landon's family made it clear that they wanted more than just justice for their loved one. They wanted Tesla to improve its technology to prevent similar accidents in the future. They also believed the driver should take responsibility for failing to stay alert. Tesla, however, remained silent on the matter, refusing to comment on the case. The driver of the vehicle was not immediately charged, and it was unclear whether they would face legal consequences. For Landon's family, the pain of losing him was made worse by the knowledge that his death could have been prevented. Friends and loved ones shared stories about his kindness and generosity. His sister Lindsay spoke about how he had always been there for her. His parents, Sandy and Lloyd, struggled to cope with the reality of life without their son. While the investigation into Tesla's autopilot system is still ongoing, Landon's tragic death has fueled an important conversation about the future of self-driving technology. His family hopes that by speaking out, they can push for changes that will make the roads safer for everyone especially motorcyclists, who remain among the most vulnerable. Only time will tell whether Tesla will be held accountable, but one thing is clear: Landon Embry's story has become part of a much larger debate, one that is far from over. November 8, 2020, in Harare, Zimbabwe. Genius Kadungure, known to many as Ginimbi, had just left his mansion in Domboshava. He was driving his Rolls-Royce Wraith, a car worth about $500,000. It was around 5 a.m. Ginimbi had spent the night at Dreams nightclub, which he owned. The occasion was the 26th birthday of Michelle Amuli, better known as Moana, a growing influencer and fitness coach. The plan was to continue the celebration somewhere else, but they never got there. Earlier that night, Ginimbi posted a video on Instagram. He appeared lively and excited. He posted that they were going out to pop champagne. That was his last post to his more than 600,000 followers. In the car with him were Moana, Malawian businessman Limumba Karim, and a woman from Mozambique identified only as Elisha. Karim was wanted in Malawi for his connection to a 2013 government fund scandal involving more than 24 million British pounds. He had moved to South Africa to avoid being arrested. Witnesses said the group seemed happy and intoxicated as they left the club. The streets were mostly empty. As they drove along Borrowdale Road, a man named Danny Kuwanga saw what happened next. He said Ginimbi's car passed him at high speed and then tried to overtake another vehicle. That's when it collided head-on with a blue Honda Fit coming from the opposite direction. The Rolls-Royce spun off the road, hit a tree, and burst into flames. The Honda Fit was damaged on one side, but its driver and passenger survived with only minor injuries. The scene around Ginimbi's car was far worse. Kuwanga said the crash was so intense that Ginimbi was thrown from the car. He landed nearby, conscious but clearly in distress. Kuwanga and 3 others helped move him from the wreck. One witness said Ginimbi was shaking and calling out for help. Within 5 minutes, he lost consciousness and passed away. The other passengers were trapped inside. The impact had jammed the doors. People nearby could hear them screaming for help as flames spread. Bystanders tried using buckets of water and tree branches to control the fire, but it didn't work. The fire grew too quickly. Moana, Karim, and Elisha could not escape. Their bodies were burned beyond recognition. Emergency crews spent hours recovering them from the wreckage. The police later confirmed the deaths. A statement from Assistant Commissioner Paul Nyathi said the vehicle caught fire after colliding with the Honda Fit while trying to overtake. Moana had made a name for herself in Zimbabwe's entertainment industry. She was featured in music videos and was active on social media. Her father, Mr. Ishmael Amuli, was heartbroken. Their relationship had been strained after she separated from her husband in 2017. He said he disapproved of her lifestyle, which he believed went against their faith. He raised 5 children on his own after parting ways with Moana's mother. Karim's background made the crash even more controversial. Though his exact role in the fraud case was unclear, his name had long been tied to missing public funds. Elisha's full identity remains unknown. Ginimbi had become one of Zimbabwe's most well-known figures. He started his business at 17 and built a fortune between 7 million and 76 million British pounds, mostly through gas and petroleum. But he was better known for his wealth and luxury cars, Lamborghinis, Ferraris, Bentleys. He often threw lavish parties, some costing up to $50,000. However, he had also been investigated for financial misconduct. Police had seized several of his cars over unpaid import duties. At the time of his death, one Bentley was still in police custody. He was also related to Mary Mubaiwa, the estranged wife of the country's vice president. The crash stunned the nation. Crowds gathered at the scene. Public figures, fans, and close friends came to mourn. His sister Nelia and manager Shally were deeply affected. Funeral plans were underway for all 4 victims. Moana's burial faced delays due to religious customs and family disagreements. The police continued their investigation, though it was clear that speed and reckless driving were factors. One witness said Ginimbi tried to help his friends, but the car exploded before he could. That morning, 4 lives were lost in an instant. Just hours earlier, they were laughing and celebrating. Then it all ended with fire, chaos, and silence. It was December 2024 in Dallas, Texas. Just after 3 p.m., a black McLaren hypercar worth $400,000 sped down Abrams Road in the Lake Highlands neighborhood. This was right near Forest Meadow Middle School, and students had likely just been released for the day. Traffic was beginning to build. Witnesses said the engine was roaring, and the car was moving incredibly fast. Then, in an instant, everything changed. Inside the car were two men, 29-year-old Cristobal Flores Espino and 31-year-old Robert Leroy Rocha. They were driving through a neighborhood full of families and kids walking home from school. As they approached the intersection of Abrams Road and Royal Lane, something went wrong. The McLaren lost control, veered off the road, and slammed into a large tree. The impact was violent enough to split the vehicle in half. The front section wrapped around the tree. The rear section was thrown more than 30 feet down the road. Pieces of the car were scattered across the street and sidewalk. Cristobal and Robert didn't survive. Emergency responders from Dallas Fire Rescue arrived quickly, but both men were already gone. The damage was so severe that rescuers had to use heavy tools to reach the wreckage. This wasn't a normal accident. It was total destruction. Another vehicle, a gold Toyota sedan, was also involved. A woman was driving it. She crashed into a separate tree and was taken to the hospital with injuries that were not life-threatening. Her car's front end was severely damaged, but she survived. The crash was so loud that nearby residents rushed outside. Several called 911. Others recorded what they saw. Photos and videos later posted online showed just how extreme the impact had been. The McLaren was barely recognizable. The front half was crushed around the tree. The rear half sat alone on the road, almost intact, but completely separated. The vehicle was believed to be a McLaren 570S coupe. It's known for its high performance, equipped with a 3.8-liter twin-turbo V8 engine. It can go from 0 to 62 miles per hour in 3.2 seconds, and its top speed exceeds 200 miles per hour. It's not made for city driving. It's a high-powered machine built for controlled environments. Police immediately shut down Abrams Road, especially the area near the school. Investigators arrived to measure skid marks, mark debris, and collect evidence. At first, the cause of the crash wasn't clear. Lieutenant Tremise Jones told reporters the next day that investigators were still looking into what caused the crash. They were reviewing every possible factor, including speed, distractions, and mechanical failure. There was no sign that police were chasing the car, and it hadn't been reported stolen. No substances had been confirmed at the time. The location of the crash added to the seriousness. This wasn't a highway. It was a school zone, where children walk home and crossing guards help families get across safely. Driving at high speed here wasn't just risky. It was dangerous for everyone nearby. Photos of the crash spread quickly online. People were shocked by what they saw. A car worth hundreds of thousands, torn apart like paper. The next day, candles and flowers appeared at the site. Locals came to pay their respects. Though Cristobal and Robert weren't public figures, their deaths deeply affected the neighborhood. The McLaren's carbon fiber frame is designed to handle extreme impacts. But even with that level of protection, the crash was too severe. The front was crushed beyond recognition. The rear section where the engine is was launched away but couldn't protect either occupant. No safety features could make a difference at that speed. In Dallas, the woman driving the Toyota was later released from the hospital. She began helping police with the investigation. Her account gave them a better idea of what happened just before the crash. The official cause still hasn't been confirmed. Investigators are reviewing all footage, vehicle data, and witness statements. They're trying to determine whether it was speed alone or if something else triggered the crash. This all took place just under 10 miles from downtown Dallas. A powerful car like the McLaren 570S wasn't meant for roads like this. And when that kind of power is used in a school zone, the outcome can be devastating. Cristobal and Robert lost their lives within seconds. A normal afternoon turned into a scene of destruction that no one could forget. Investigators are still searching for answers, and two families are left trying to understand how it all happened. It was early Sunday morning, October 2nd, 2022, in St. Petersburg, Florida. Three teenagers, 15-year-old Mario Bonilla, 15-year-old Keandrick Lang, and 16-year-old Malachi Daniels, were walking through a quiet neighborhood. Most people were asleep, but the boys weren't just out for a stroll. They were checking cars to see if any had been left unlocked. Lang used his shirt to pull on door handles, trying not to leave fingerprints. They weren't after any specific car, just trying their luck. Then, at a driveway near 62nd Avenue North and 28th Street North, they found a white 2016 Maserati. It was unlocked, and the keys were inside. Lang got into the driver's seat, Bonilla sat up front, and Daniels climbed into the back. What they didn't know was that a sheriff's helicopter was flying overhead. It had been deployed for another case nearby, but happened to catch sight of the boys going from car to car. The deputies in the helicopter watched as the teens entered the Maserati and immediately called ground units to report a possible car theft. Lang pulled out of the driveway and turned onto 62nd Avenue North without turning on the headlights. It was just after 3:20 a.m. Deputies in marked cars activated their emergency lights to stop the vehicle. Lang hit the gas, believing he was being chased. But the Pinellas County Sheriff's Office follows a strict policy. No chasing vehicles unless certain conditions are met. A supervising sergeant told deputies to slow down, and they backed off to around 35 miles per hour. The helicopter kept following the Maserati. Lang sped up, fast. Just seconds before the crash, he was going 123 miles per hour. None of the boys were wearing seatbelts. Lang lost control of the car. It jumped a curb, slammed into a business sign, and flipped, landing upside down in a parking lot next to a building. The Maserati was destroyed, folded in half from the impact. Deputies arrived within seconds. Bonilla, in the front passenger seat, didn't survive. Daniels in the back was critically injured and rushed to the hospital. His condition was described as life-threatening. Lang was also taken to the hospital with serious injuries, but was expected to live. The entire event, from the theft to the crash, was recorded by the helicopter. The sheriff's office later released that footage during a press conference. The video showed Lang using his shirt to open the car door, the teens getting in, and the car speeding off with headlights still off. Just a minute and a half later, the crash occurred. Investigators found a .25 caliber handgun inside the wrecked car. It hadn't been legally registered since 1968 and was believed to have been passed around illegally. None of the teens had valid driver's licenses. While none had extensive criminal histories, they had been showing troubling behavior. Just a few weeks earlier, on September 11th, the same teens had been stopped by deputies in nearby Kenneth City for wandering around a neighborhood early in the morning. Officers contacted their parents, and the boys were taken home. No charges were filed. After the crash, investigators spoke to the families. The parents were heartbroken. One father had even moved his son to a different school, trying to change his path. But that night, all three had left home without anyone noticing. Sheriff Bob Gualtieri said the teens had been making poor decisions, though they hadn't yet faced real consequences, until now. The car's owner, who had left the Maserati unlocked with the keys inside, was contacted. At a press conference, the sheriff stressed the importance of locking vehicles and not leaving keys inside. One choice changed everything. One teen died. Another may never recover. The third survived, but now faces serious legal consequences. All because of an unlocked car. 1st, 2024 in northern Italy. Around midday, a white Ferrari GTC4 was speeding down the A4 to A5 highway between Ivrea and Sant'Anna. Inside the car were 40-year-old DJ Hisny Kestad, also known as DJ Style Q, and 21-year-old Ukrainian model Anna Kravska. Earlier that day, they had left a nightclub in Sion, Switzerland, where Kestad had performed. What began as a high-speed drive ended in one of the most serious road accidents Italy had seen that year. Anna, originally from Odessa, Ukraine, had built a modeling career and lived in Switzerland. She was active on social media, often posting about her trips and daily life. But just before the crash, she went silent. Her friends grew worried when they didn't hear from her after she told them she was heading to Italy. Kestad was well known in the European nightlife scene. He had performed in several countries, including Albania, Germany, Switzerland, and the United States. Though he lived in Villeneuve, Switzerland, his wife and two children, ages 11 and 14, still lived in Kosovo. The night before the crash, he performed at the Jukebox Club in Sion. Witnesses saw him leave the venue with Anna. At around 1:00 p.m. on Easter Sunday, the Ferrari was reportedly traveling at around 200 kilometers per hour, about 124 miles per hour, when Kestage lost control. Near the town of Alice Castello, the car slammed into a guardrail. The impact was so severe that the Ferrari split in half. The front of the car, where both passengers were seated, was destroyed and quickly caught fire. One of the front wheels was thrown several yards away. Only the rear of the car remained mostly intact. Witnesses said the car had been moving at extreme speed right before the crash. Emergency services arrived quickly, police, paramedics, and firefighters, but it was too late. Both Kestage and Anna died instantly. The fire made it very hard to identify the bodies. Authorities first confirmed the identity of the driver, Kestage. His body was found near the driver's seat, and a gold watch that had survived the fire helped confirm who he was. The second victim, a young woman in the passenger seat, couldn't be identified visually due to the fire damage. But Swiss police had just received a missing persons report from Anna's friends. The timing matched. She had told them she was going to Italy but never contacted them again. Witnesses at the club confirmed she had left with Kestage. Investigators launched DNA testing, and a second gold watch, one seen often in Anna's social media posts, was found at the scene. Her friends were certain it belonged to her. The Ferrari they were in was a high-powered luxury car worth more than $135,000. At extreme speeds, even a small mistake can be fatal. Investigators found no mechanical issues or road hazards. The cause appeared to be speed alone. Photos from the scene show the extent of the damage. The front of the car was nearly gone, burned down to metal. Only the rear remained, offering a clue to the type of car involved. This case drew attention due to who the victims were. Anna and Kestage were both active online and had large followings. Though they never confirmed a relationship, those close to them said they had been spending time together more often. Kestage's brother, Agimi, described him as a kind and caring person, a loving father and devoted sibling. His two children were left without their father. Anna's friends were heartbroken. She had rebuilt her life in Switzerland and was doing well. The sudden loss hit them hard. Investigators shut down the highway for hours as cleanup crews removed the debris. Parts of the car had scattered across the road and nearby fields. Every piece was documented to understand how the crash happened. No foul play or outside factors were found. This was a case of speed, a moment of lost control, and a car that couldn't recover. There was no warning, no way out. Just an instant crash that ended two lives. The morning of November 22, 2023, just before Thanksgiving. The weather was cold, and the roads were busy with travelers heading out for the holiday. At the Rainbow Bridge border crossing near Niagara Falls, cars moved slowly through inspection booths between the United States and Canada. Everything seemed normal. Then, just before 11:30 a.m., something unexpected happened. A silver Bentley Flying Spur suddenly sped down Niagara Street at a dangerously high speed. It crossed an intersection, slightly swerved, then hit a median with full force. The car launched into the air and crashed straight into a border inspection booth. The explosion was huge. Witnesses described a loud blast and a massive fireball. Smoke and debris filled the area. The car was destroyed beyond recognition. Border agents rushed in. Authorities shut down the entire area, closing all 4 U.S.-Canada border crossings. News outlets scrambled to report, and social media lit up with panic. At first, many feared it was an attack, but as more details came out, the story took a different turn. It wasn't planned, but it was still horrifying. 2 days later, the victims were identified as Kurt and Monica Villani, both 53 from Grand Island, New York, just 10 miles away. Married since 1995, they were known in their community for running Gooey's Lumber, a local hardware business with 7 locations across western New York. They were respected, kind, and generous. That morning, they were on their way to see a Kiss concert in Toronto. Before heading to the border, they had stopped at the Seneca Niagara Resort and Casino. The concert had been canceled just hours earlier, but the couple likely didn't know. The car they were in wasn't ordinary. The 2022 Bentley Flying Spur is a high-performance luxury vehicle. It can go from 0 to 60 miles per hour in under 4 seconds and weighs over 5,100 pounds. Used models sell for more than $200,000. It's built for speed, not for regular city streets. Footage from border security cameras showed the Bentley flying past slower traffic before hitting the curb and launching. The crash injured a border officer inside the booth, but they survived with minor injuries. The Villanis died instantly as their car caught fire. Nothing could be done. From the time they turned onto Niagara Street to the moment of impact, only about 30 seconds had passed. In that time, the car sped through several intersections and ran at least 4 red lights. It narrowly missed hitting other vehicles. The FBI quickly ruled out any intent or criminal involvement. It was declared an accident, but people were still left wondering what caused the car to accelerate like that. Weeks before, Kurt had told friends he thought something was wrong with the gas pedal. No other details were shared, and it's unclear if it was inspected. Bentley Motors hasn't commented. The 2022 model had 3 recalls, but none involved acceleration. In 2021, there had been a recall involving gas pedals, but only for right-hand drive cars overseas, not this one. A road safety engineer later reviewed the footage and noticed a dark vapor trail behind the car, likely from the tires. This suggested Kurt was braking hard, awake, alert, and trying to stop. The Villanis left behind 2 adult children, 26-year-old Kurt Jr., a former youth hockey standout, and 27-year-old Mia. The family had a long history in the area, known for acts of generosity. In 2014, Kurt and his father gave away 250 turkeys for Thanksgiving. The Villanis often helped neighbors and supported community projects. Sadly, this wasn't the family's first tragedy. In 1978, Kurt's grandmother died in a boating accident on the Niagara River. A bridge that wasn't properly lit caused the crash. The family later won a lawsuit. The crash has raised questions about whether such fast cars belong on public roads. Even with advanced features, not all high-performance systems can prevent disaster, especially at those speeds. In the US, there are still no rules requiring automatic speed control. In under a minute, a luxury car turned into a fireball. 2 lives were lost, and a community is still left searching for answers. And it all happened in less than 60 seconds. It was the afternoon of August 23, 2018 in San Diego, California. Traffic on Interstate 805 was moving as usual, but at around 4:30 p.m., drivers began calling 911. A black McLaren 650S, valued at nearly $500,000, was speeding the wrong way on the freeway, going over 100 miles per hour. Moments later, it crashed head-on into a 2010 Hyundai SUV. The crash was violent. Both cars caught fire. Debris flew across the highway and hit more than a dozen other vehicles. One person was injured and taken to the hospital but survived. Inside the Hyundai were 43-year-old Eileen Pizarro and her 12-year-old daughter, Ariana. Both were pronounced dead at the scene. The McLaren's driver was also killed. He was identified as 18-year-old Trevor Heitman, a YouTube content creator known online as McSkillet, with close to 900,000 subscribers. Just 30 minutes earlier, Trevor had driven the same car through the gates of Ashley Falls Elementary School. Witnesses said he nearly hit pedestrians. He then got out of the car, threw an object at a door, broke a window, and drove off. No one was harmed, but the event left people unsettled. Authorities confirmed that Trevor was involved in both incidents. Based on the speed, direction, and his earlier behavior, many believe the crash was not accidental. For his followers, the news was shocking. Trevor became well known in the gaming world, especially for his videos about Counter-Strike, Global Offensive, or CS:GO. He also ran a business where he bought, sold, and designed digital weapon skins, some of which were worth thousands of dollars. At one point, his collection was valued at more than $100,000. But in early 2018, things began to fall apart. Valve, the company behind CS:GO, banned Trevor from trading after linking him to a website that involved gambling using in-game items. His account was permanently locked, and he lost access to everything he had built. After that, Trevor stopped posting online. His social media presence faded. Friends and fans noticed a change in his behavior. Some believe the crash may have been intentional, though police never confirmed that. At a press conference, the California Highway Patrol said they couldn't speak about Trevor's mental state. Toxicology results later confirmed that there were no substances or alcohol in his system, and the case was ultimately ruled accidental. What was confirmed was that Trevor entered the freeway at Carroll Canyon Road. driving south in the northbound HOV lane at over 100 miles per hour when he struck the Hyundai. Eileen Pizarro, who was driving the SUV, was a licensed therapist. She lived in San Diego's College area with her 3 kids, Dominic, 22, Angelo, 19, and Ariana, 12. That Thursday, Eileen and Ariana were heading to Orange County. Ariana was set to start 7th grade that Monday. She loved jazz music and dreamed of becoming a singer. Her brother Dominic said she was full of energy and very strong-willed. When officers arrived to deliver the news, Dominic said he completely broke down. He described his mother as selfless and deeply devoted to her children. Because of the fire, Eileen and Ariana's bodies were difficult to identify. Dominic started a fundraiser to help cover funeral costs, and within days it raised over $7,000. He shared how his family was struggling to accept what had happened. Photos from the crash showed the McLaren reduced to burned, twisted metal. Emergency crews closed the freeway for nearly 10 hours to clean up the scene. The story spread quickly online. Many couldn't believe the driver was McSkillet. In one of his past videos, Trevor had shown off the same McLaren, saying it could beat nearly any car in a drag race. He never revealed his face, so until that moment, most only knew his digital persona. Some believed that losing access to his account had ruined his future. Others thought the crash may have been a tragic accident. Authorities were still exploring all possible causes, including health or emotional issues. In just 30 minutes, from crashing through school gates at 4:00 p.m. to the deadly collision at 4:30 p.m., everything fell apart. At the school, staff confirmed someone had damaged property but said no one was hurt. Still, many were shaken by how close it came to being worse. On the freeway, the wreckage left behind told the story. Burned-out vehicles, a grieving family, and a life cut short in seconds. April 6, 2024, in Los Angeles, California. At around 5 a.m., the city was still quiet. On the corner of Sherman Way and Reseda Boulevard, 2 LAPD officers noticed something strange. A white 2019 Lamborghini Huracan was stopped at a red light. But even when the light turned green, the car didn't move. They pulled up next to the vehicle and shone a spotlight inside. Behind the wheel was a man who appeared to be asleep. The officers turned on their lights and pulled the car over. The driver was 51-year-old Elliot Dugan, a local man with a long criminal record. They tapped on the window and woke him up. "Do you know why I pulled you over?" one of the officers asked. "No," Dugan replied. "You were asleep at the light." Dugan stayed calm. He said the Lamborghini was a rental and handed over his license and registration. The officers returned to their vehicle to check the information, and that's when everything changed. The car had been reported stolen, and Dugan wasn't just a tired driver. He had multiple outstanding felony warrants. This was no longer a simple traffic stop. The officers returned and asked Dugan to step out of the vehicle, but he refused. He claimed the car wasn't stolen and that he had rented it. He became argumentative and asked for his license back, saying he knew the law. Despite the officers' calm requests, Dugan wouldn't cooperate. Then, without warning, he floored the gas pedal. The Lamborghini shot down Sherman Way, quickly reaching extreme speeds. The officers rushed back to their patrol car, but by then, Dugan was already far ahead. Surveillance footage captured the Lamborghini speeding through the streets at 113 miles per hour. Moments later, there was silence. No braking, no warning, just a crash. Near the intersection of Vinalden Avenue and Sherman Way, the Lamborghini hit the center median at full speed. The car was torn in half. The impact destroyed several trees, and debris flew in all directions. Security cameras didn't catch the crash itself, but body cam footage showed the aftermath. One half of the car was in the westbound lane. The other was across the street. Auto parts and broken glass were scattered across more than 100 feet. Smoke rose from parts of the wreck, and some flames had to be put out by officers. As police searched the scene, they realized Dugan wasn't inside the car. They looked around and called out his name. Some local residents came outside, confused and alarmed by the crash. No one had seen anyone run. Moments later, officers found Elliot Dugan's body on the sidewalk in front of a nearby apartment complex. He had been thrown from the vehicle during the crash. Paramedics arrived shortly after, but it was already too late. Dugan was pronounced dead at the scene. The crash had caused serious damage beyond just the Lamborghini. Several parked cars were hit by debris. Windows shattered, roofs were dented, and at least 4 cars showed visible damage. A tree had also fallen onto one of them. Reports later showed Dugan had been in and out of Los Angeles County Jail over the past few years. His latest release was in January, after being held on a misdemeanor. At the time of this crash, he was not being held on bond. Following the incident, the LAPD released body cam and dash cam footage that showed the full event. from finding him asleep to the high-speed escape. They confirmed the car had been stolen before the crash. An internal investigation was launched to review whether the proper procedures were followed during the stop and the chase. Captain Kelly Muniz stated that it could take months and would involve video review, forensic analysis, and possible witness interviews. As of now, no new details have been released about the original owner of the vehicle or when it was taken. But one thing was clear: in just a few seconds, a man with open warrants in a stolen car made a decision that would end his life. Elliot Dugan was 51 years old. It was April 19, 2025, in Concordia, Sagittaria, a quiet town in northern Italy. Luca Polito, a 51-year-old construction business owner, was taking his new Lamborghini Gallardo for a drive. He had bought the luxury car just days earlier, a dream he had finally made real. Riding with him was a friend in the passenger seat. The Gallardo, a supercar worth around 90,000 pounds and capable of reaching 200 miles per hour, was still unfamiliar to him. Luca wasn't just known for his business success. He was known for being generous, humble, and supportive. He was married to Sonia Trevisan and had a son named Andrea. After losing both of his brothers in recent years due to illness, Luca had become the last surviving sibling in his family. But that April afternoon, everything changed. Around 2:00 p.m., Luca was driving on a narrow rural road outside of town, bordered by farmland and shallow canals. According to witnesses, the Lamborghini suddenly sped up. Moments later, it swerved, flipped into the air, and landed upside down in one of the nearby canals. The water in the canal was only 28 centimeters deep, but the crash caused the vehicle to fill with mud and water quickly. Within seconds, the car was almost entirely submerged, trapping both Luca and his passenger inside. Drivers nearby saw the accident and called emergency services. Some even rushed to help but couldn't open the jammed car doors. Rescue teams arrived soon after. They managed to pull the passenger out first. He was alive but seriously hurt and was taken to a hospital in Portogruaro. His injuries were serious but not life-threatening. Luca, however, had been underwater longer. Still buckled into his seat, he was unresponsive when pulled out. Paramedics tried to save him, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. The likely cause of death was drowning. The news spread quickly. Many people in town were shocked. Luca was known to be cautious, especially about safety. Something had clearly gone wrong. Police and investigators from the Pordenone prosecutor's office launched a full investigation. They began by looking at possible causes: mechanical failure or driver error. Early crash reconstructions pointed to loss of control at high speed. Some mentioned a tricky stretch of road or a possible traction issue, but nothing was confirmed. The Lamborghini was inspected for mechanical faults. Media across Italy covered the story. Some said Luca was still getting used to the car's powerful engine. Even at lower speeds, a car like the Gallardo can be difficult to handle without experience. While investigators searched for answers, Luca's family was left in grief. His wife and son had grown concerned when he didn't come home and wasn't answering his phone. After already going through the loss of 2 brothers and a sister-in-law, the family was once again struck by tragedy. Luca was buried on Wednesday, April 23rd in Portogruaro. The town of Concordia, Sagittaria mourned his loss. The mayor, Claudio Odorico, called it a heavy loss for the community. Local restaurant owners who knew Luca personally described him as thoughtful and always willing to help others. His parents, still living, had now lost all 3 of their sons. As of now, investigators are still trying to determine the exact cause of the crash. Whether it was a technical issue or a moment of misjudgment, the outcome was devastating. The Gallardo, built for speed and control, can be dangerous in inexperienced hands. But even that doesn't fully explain how a shallow canal ended in such tragedy. Luca's friend is still recovering in the hospital, and the community is left waiting for answers, holding on to the memory of a man who quietly shaped the lives of those around him. It was August 5, 2022, in Los Angeles' Mar Vista neighborhood. Anne Heche, a famous actress known for roles in Volcano and I Know What You Did Last Summer, was driving her Mini Cooper. That morning, something went terribly wrong. Around 11:01 a.m., Heche lost control of her car and crashed into a home on Walgrove Avenue. The impact was intense, and the car immediately caught fire. Witnesses said she was speeding at around 80 miles per hour in a 25-mile-per-hour zone. The house was heavily damaged, and the flames consumed both the car and Heche, trapping her inside. Emergency responders arrived quickly but struggled with the fire and the structural damage. It took firefighters about 30 minutes to rescue Heche from the burning vehicle, during which time she inhaled a large amount of smoke. Hetche was critically injured and taken to the hospital, eventually being transferred to the Grossman Burn Center in West Hills. She suffered severe second-degree burns on 12% of her body, including her face, neck, shoulders, and chest, along with first-degree burns on 40% of her body. She also fractured her sternum, adding to her pain and critical condition. Medical teams worked tirelessly to save her, performing skin grafts on her neck, torso, and limbs. Despite their efforts, Hetche never regained consciousness. She was placed on life support, but her condition did not improve. On August 11th, 6 days after the crash, Hetche was declared brain dead, which is considered legal death in California. Her heart continued to beat as she remained on life support for organ donation, fulfilling a wish she had long expressed. Her family honored this desire through the One Legacy Foundation. Hetche's oldest son, Homer, who was 20, shared his grief in a statement. "My brother Atlas and I lost our mom. After 6 days of almost unbearable emotional swings, I am left with a deep sadness. Hopefully my mom is free from pain now." He also thanked friends, family, and fans for their support during that difficult time. Hollywood was stunned by Hetche's death, and tributes poured in from colleagues and fans. Ellen DeGeneres, Hetche's former partner, expressed her sorrow, tweeting, "This is a sad day. I'm sending Anne's children, family, and friends all of my love." Actress Patricia Arquette also honored Hetche, saying, "Rest in peace now, Anne. She was a wildly talented actress who endured more pain than anyone should have to." The investigation into the crash revealed that Hetche died from inhalation and thermal injuries, as well as a fractured sternum from the collision. Although toxicology tests showed traces of certain controlled substances in her system, it was confirmed that one of the substances had been administered in the hospital for pain relief. The coroner determined that Hetche was not under the influence at the time of the accident. Anne Hetche's death was officially ruled an accident. Despite the quick response of emergency crews, the intensity of the fire and the structural damage delayed her rescue, leading to her tragic end. Hetche's career spanned decades, with her rise to fame beginning in the late 80s and 90s through roles in the soap opera Another World and movies like Wag the Dog and 6 Days, 7 Nights. Her performance in the 2004 film Gracie's Choice earned her critical acclaim and a Primetime Emmy nomination. She also received a Tony Award nomination for her role in 20th Century on Broadway. Beyond her acting, Hetche was known for her courage in standing up for her beliefs. Her relationship with Ellen DeGeneres in the late 90s was groundbreaking at a time when same-gender relationships were not widely accepted in Hollywood. She faced backlash for her decision, including the loss of a major studio contract, but remained committed to her principles. Hetche's personal life had its struggles. She married Coleman Coley LaFoon in 2001, and they had a son named Homer. After their divorce in 2009, she had another son, Atlas, with actor James Tupper. Despite her challenges, Hetche was a devoted mother. Anne Hetche's legacy endures through her films and the impact she had on those who knew her. She will be remembered for her talent, her bravery, and her desire to spread love and kindness. It was the early morning of September 27, 1986, when tragedy struck Metallica. The band was in Sweden, touring Europe after the success of their third album, Master of Puppets. At just 24 years old, their bassist, Cliff Burton, had already made a significant impact on the heavy metal scene. Many believed his talent would help the band reach new heights, but fate had other plans. Metallica was at a peak in their career. Master of Puppets had gone gold, and fans were captivated by the band's aggressive style. A lot of their success was credited to Burton, whose unique bass playing added depth to their sound. He pushed the limits of what a bassist could do, using distortion and effects to bring a new dimension to their music. Cliff was seen as a genius, someone who would keep driving the band creatively, but his life was cut short. After a show, the band boarded their tour bus, traveling from Sweden to Copenhagen. Tired from constant touring, the members went to their bunks to rest. Cliff Burton and guitarist Kirk Hammett played cards to decide who would sleep in the best bunk. Burton drew the ace of spades, winning the spot, and Hammett took another bunk without knowing how significant this moment would become. Around 7 a.m., disaster struck. The bus lost control and slid off the road. The driver claimed they hit black ice, causing the vehicle to flip over. Burton, who was asleep in his top bunk, was thrown through the window, and the bus landed on him, killing him instantly. The band was devastated. Frontman James Hetfield searched the area for the black ice the driver mentioned, but found nothing, which raised suspicions. To this day, the band questions whether black ice was really to blame or if the driver's fatigue or another issue caused the accident. The scene was horrifying. Kirk Hammett remembers the crew's screams and the sight of Burton trapped under the bus. Efforts to free him were unsuccessful. A crane was brought in to lift the bus, but it slipped, dropping the vehicle back onto Burton's body. Whether Cliff died in the first or second impact is unknown, but either way, he was gone. The accident left Metallica shattered. Hetfield was filled with anger, questioning the driver and even walking miles in the cold, trying to make sense of what happened. Hammett spent the first day in denial, unable to accept the reality of losing his friend. When the band returned home, the grief hit them even harder. Cliff was more than just a bassist. He was a key figure in the band's creative direction and a close friend. News of Cliff Burton's death shocked the metal world. At just 24, he had already become a legend. His body was sent to a local hospital in Sweden, where an autopsy confirmed that he had died from multiple injuries. No substances or alcohol were involved, silencing rumors that had spread after the accident. Still, doubts about the bus driver's story remained, with some suspecting fatigue as the real cause. The driver was cleared of any wrongdoing, but the band was left with unanswered questions. The true cause of the crash remains a mystery, and it continues to haunt Metallica to this day. After the accident, the band faced a difficult decision. Should they continue or disband? Their manager, Peter Mensch, encouraged them to move forward and use their grief to fuel their music. Though it seemed impossible at first, they eventually realized that carrying on would be the best way to honor Cliff's legacy. The band hired Jason Newsted as their new bassist, and in 1988 they released And Justice for All, their first album without Burton. Although Newsted stepped into the role, many fans could feel Cliff's absence. Tracks like To Live Is to Die and Orion served as tributes to him, ensuring his influence remained a part of Metallica's sound. Though Metallica went on to achieve more success, they were never quite the same. Cliff Burton's death left a void that could never be filled. In 2009, he was posthumously inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame, forever securing his place as one of the greatest bassists in history.
November 30th, 2013, started pleasantly for Paul Walker. The 40-year-old actor, most famous for his role in the beloved Fast and Furious franchise, was spending his day with his mother and his 15-year-old daughter, Meadow. The three were chatting about buying a Christmas tree when Paul received a message, suddenly reminded of an event he needed to attend. He left in a hurry, completely unaware of the tragic fate that awaited him, a fate that would soon shock the world. Paul Walker, born Paul William Walker IV on September 12, 1973, in Glendale, California, was destined for the spotlight from an early age. With a mother who worked as a model and a father who was a former amateur boxer, Paul was immersed in entertainment from a young age, setting the stage for his future as a beloved Hollywood star. Paul's career began at the age of 2 with a Pampers commercial, and he went on to have minor roles in television shows like Highway to Heaven and Charles in Charge while in school. His career took off in the late 1990s, appearing in films such as Pleasantville and She's All That. However, his performance as Brian O'Connor, an undercover cop in The Fast and the Furious, which came out in 2001, rocketed him to fame and established his place in Hollywood. Throughout his acting career, Paul Walker was known for his passion for cars and racing and his dedication to charity work. A combination of those three passions brought his early demise on November 30th, 2013. That day, he attended a charity event organized by his non-profit, Reach Out Worldwide. The event was held at a high-performance car shop owned by Paul and his friend Roger Rodas, a former race car driver who also managed Walker's finances. After the event, Paul and Roger decided to go for a ride in a 2005 Porsche Carrera GT, a high-speed sports car that was difficult to handle. It was around 3:30 p.m. Paul and Roger had just left the event. Roger was behind the wheel, and Paul was in the passenger seat. The Porsche had an estimated speed of 100 miles per hour. That's when Roger lost control of the car. The Porsche hit a curb, a tree, and a light post, and struck another tree. Then, it burst into flames. Those attending the charity, employees and friends alike, came running, but were met with a devastating sight. The car was engulfed in fire, and their attempts to rescue Paul and Roger proved futile. Roger's young son also witnessed the catastrophic accident. Both males were pronounced dead at the scene. Paul Walker died from a combination of severe traumatic injuries and burns. The Los Angeles County Sheriff's Department ultimately ruled that the car's speed and the tire's age were the main factors in the crash. Their examination revealed that the vehicle was traveling at speeds ranging from 80 to 100 miles per hour when it lost control, and there were no signs of drugs or alcohol in either man. The whole world found out about the accident within mere hours. The tragic event sent shockwaves through Hollywood. Fans and colleagues mourned the loss of Paul Walker, who was well liked and admired. Paul's daughter, Meadow, filed a wrongful death lawsuit against Porsche, claiming that design flaws in the Carrera GT caused her father's death. While Porsche argued that the car had been abused and altered, both sides eventually settled the lawsuit under confidential terms in 2015. Paul Walker died while filming Furious 7, forcing the production to halt while the producers asked his family how to proceed. His brother Cody Walker came in to help finish the remaining scenes, using CGI to honor Walker's memory on screen. The crash scene in Santa Clarita became a makeshift monument, with fans worldwide leaving flowers, letters, and mementos in memory of the late actor. By June of 1967, Jayne Mansfield's star had begun to lose some of its power, but the actress was still famous for her bombshell appearance and willingness to play provocative parts in Hollywood movies. Jayne never got the chance to reclaim her place in the spotlight. On June 29, 1967, the actress died in a tragic accident, an accident still shrouded in mystery. Fact or fiction, the story of Jayne Mansfield's passing became the stuff of urban legends. Jayne Mansfield was born Vera Jane Palmer on April 19, 1933, in Bryn Mawr, Pennsylvania. She had always dreamt of being famous, and her dreams became a reality. At the age of 17, Jayne married Paul Mansfield. The couple later relocated to Hollywood, where Jayne pursued her acting career. Mansfield was a smart woman. She quickly realized she could create a daring image and capture the public's attention. As such, she became one of the first Playboy bunnies. She stood out from her peers when she was named Playboy's Playmate of the Month in February 1955. Whether it was exposing her breasts in public or being the first actress to be filmed nude on screen in the 1963 movie Promises, Promises, Mansfield was well known for her provocative stunts. She had a pink house, multiple chihuahuas, and a rivalry with Hollywood's other blonde bombshell, Marilyn Monroe. However, when Monroe died in 1962, Jayne Mansfield was deeply affected. "Maybe I'll be next," she ominously remarked, a prediction that would prove eerily accurate. It was after midnight on June 29, 1967. Jayne had finished a performance at a nightclub in Biloxi, Mississippi, and began a long drive to New Orleans for a television appearance. Since Hollywood's idea of beauty had shifted from busty blondes to petite beauties, Jayne's career now entailed primarily nightclub performances and small appearances, requiring her to travel frequently. That night, she traveled to New Orleans with her boyfriend, Sam Brody, and their driver, Ronnie Harrison. 3 of her children were sleeping in the back seat of the 1966 Buick Electra 225. Jayne's 4 chihuahuas were also in the car. They traveled along the beach road, passing through towns like Biloxi, Gulfport, and Pass Christian, basking in the warm summer night air. After crossing the high-rise Henderson Point Bridge and the Bay St. Louis Bridge, they made a brief stop for a pit stop at the White Kitchen, a well-known 24-hour landmark near the Mississippi-Louisiana state line. However, after this stop, the journey turned dark along Highway 90. A thick mist began to settle over the swampy marshlands, obscuring visibility and adding to the danger of the winding road. Things got more dangerous as the Buick sped through the foggy early morning hours. A slow-moving mosquito fogging truck made visibility even more difficult. Its insecticide spray mixed with the natural mist produced a thick, blinding fog. As such, Jayne, her boyfriend Sam, and their driver Ronnie couldn't see the 18-wheeler driving slowly ahead of them on the dim, curving road. The Buick, traveling at an estimated speed of 80 miles per hour, did not see the truck in time to avoid a collision. The impact was catastrophic. The Buick slammed full force into the back of the 18-wheeler, then it slid under its back, As a result, its roof was sheared off. The front of the Buick was almost destroyed. Jane Mansfield, Sam Brody, and Ronnie Harrison, all three adults in the front seat, were killed instantly. Jane Mansfield was thrown from the vehicle, her body landing on the shoulder of the road. The rumors began almost instantly. When Jane was thrown from the car, her blonde wig was left hanging from the corner of the shattered windshield. Photographs of the accident were published in the newspapers, and upon seeing a mass of blonde hair, people began speculating that Jane Mansfield had been decapitated. Nevertheless, the coroner who conducted the autopsy reported that although Jane's head had sustained serious trauma, including what may be called scalping, with portions of her skull exposed, it was not severed. Mansfield, Brody, and Harrison were all pronounced at the scene. The tragic and gruesome nature of Jane Mansfield's death inspired a lot of rumors and speculations. Mansfield's past connection with the founder of the Church of Satan, Anton LaVey, was the subject of one particularly persistent story. According to this rumor, LaVey cursed Brody, Jane's boyfriend at the time, to die in a car accident. This legend gained widespread traction, especially when the 2017 documentary Mansfield 6667 was released. The accident had a huge impact on car safety. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration mandated the installation of underride guards on semi-truck trailers due to the way the Buick slid under the truck, which sheared off the top of the car and caused Jane's head injury. These safety bars, designed to prevent vehicles from going underneath trailers during a rear-end collision, became known as Mansfield bars in the actress's memory.
It was January 1st, 2025, when an explosion shook the entrance of the Trump International Hotel in Las Vegas. Around 9 a.m., a Tesla Cybertruck parked outside the hotel suddenly burst into flames, sending debris flying and causing panic among guests and pedestrians. This was not an accident. It was a planned attack by 37-year-old Matthew Allen Livelsberger, a United States Army Special Forces soldier. Livelsberger had prepared for this attack in advance. He rented the Cybertruck and loaded it with fireworks, mortars, gas canisters, and camping fuel, all rigged to detonate remotely. However, before triggering the explosion, he had already taken his own life, using a firearm placed near his feet. At the time of the blast, Livelsberger was the only one in the vehicle. 7 people nearby were injured, but none critically. The explosion did not cause major damage to the hotel, but it left investigators searching for answers. Authorities later discovered notes and a manifesto left behind by Livelsberger revealing his motives. He expressed deep political frustration and personal struggles, stating that his act was meant to grab the nation's attention. He believed that people only reacted to extreme events and saw the explosion as a way to highlight issues he felt were being ignored. His writings also reflected on his military past, particularly his time in Afghanistan. He spoke of the losses he had witnessed and the heavy burden he carried from his service. He had battled severe mental health issues, including post-traumatic stress disorder and depression, made worse by physical injuries from combat, including multiple concussions and back surgeries. Investigators found that Livelsberger had been planning the attack for weeks. His search history included information about explosives, ammunition, and fireworks regulations in Arizona. He had also documented his preparations, listing his purchases of firearms, camping gear, and other supplies. Despite his final act, Livelsberger had been highly regarded in the military. He was a decorated combat veteran who served multiple tours in Afghanistan as part of a Green Beret team. His colleagues remembered him as a compassionate and capable leader who risked his life for others. He had even specialized in dismantling explosive devices, an ironic contrast to the way he chose to carry out his attack. His ex-girlfriend, Alicia Artist, shared that he had often spoken about his struggles. He described feeling trapped in his own mind, haunted by his experiences in the military. He had mentioned his ongoing pain, both physical and emotional, and referred to his life as a constant battle. His manifesto revealed a deep disillusionment with the state of the country. He believed that the United States was in decline and saw drastic action as the only way to force change. Though he expressed admiration for President-elect Donald Trump and Tesla Chief Executive Officer Elon Musk, his attack was not directed at any specific individual. Instead, It seemed to be a statement of his overall dissatisfaction with the nation's leadership and direction. Despite the dramatic nature of the explosion, it did not achieve the large-scale destruction he may have intended. While his actions drew attention, they left behind more confusion than clarity. His military peers, who had known him as a loyal and selfless soldier, struggled to reconcile the man they respected with the person responsible for the attack. Authorities continue to investigate the case, including Livelsberger's use of artificial intelligence tools like ChatGPT in planning the event. His story raises important questions about mental health support for veterans and how to prevent similar tragedies. Many service members return home carrying invisible wounds, struggling to adjust to civilian life. Cases like Livelsberger's highlight the urgent need for better resources and support systems for those who have sacrificed for their country. On October 24, 2024, a devastating crash in Toronto claimed 4 lives and left one woman fighting to survive. The accident involved a Tesla Model Y, a high-tech electric vehicle known for its safety features. However, on this tragic day, the car became a death trap. The crash happened on Lakeshore Boulevard East at high speed. The driver lost control, causing the vehicle to hit a guardrail before slamming into a concrete pillar. The impact was severe, and within moments the car burst into flames. Inside were 5 friends, all trapped as the fire spread rapidly. The Tesla Model Y, like many modern electric cars, relies on electronic door handles that require power to function. After the crash, the doors became unresponsive, making escape nearly impossible. The only survivor, a young woman in her 20s, desperately tried to get out but was trapped inside. Rick Harper, a Canada Post employee who witnessed the crash, rushed to help. He later described the terrifying scene, recalling how the woman struggled to open the door, panicking and trying to get out, but the doors wouldn't budge. Thinking quickly, Harper grabbed a metal pole and shattered the window, allowing her to escape. The woman crawled out headfirst, scrambling to safety. Unfortunately, the other 4 passengers, Jay Sisodia, Digvijay Patel, 25-year-old Neilraj Gohil, and his 29-year-old sister Kataba Gohil, were unable to escape. Harper initially didn't realize there were others inside because the smoke was so thick. By the time he saw them, the fire had already consumed most of the vehicle. Electric vehicle fires are known to be difficult to extinguish, mainly due to the lithium-ion battery cells. In this case, the intensity of the fire was likely made worse by the impact of the crash. Firefighters have reported that Tesla battery fires require large amounts of water and can take much longer to put out than traditional car fires. The failure of the electronic doors only made things worse. Tesla vehicles have a manual override feature that allows doors to be opened in emergencies, but many owners are unaware of it. Even more concerning, not all Model Y cars have this feature for rear doors, meaning the passengers in the back had no way out. Investigators are still trying to determine the exact cause of the crash, but initial reports suggest the driver lost control before hitting the guardrail and pillar. Tesla has promoted its vehicles as some of the safest in the world, but this incident has raised serious concerns about their design. The National Highway Traffic Safety Administration, or NHTSA, has already opened investigations into the Model Y, focusing on issues like unintended acceleration and faulty braking systems. Now the attention is shifting to the potential dangers of electronic door locks in emergencies. Safety experts warn that in a chaotic, high-stress situation, most people won't have the time or knowledge to find and use the manual override. For the victims in this crash, their inability to exit the vehicle may have been the difference between life and death. The victims of this tragic accident were young, vibrant individuals with promising futures. Neilraj and Kataba Gohil were siblings, known for their kindness and close bond. Their deaths have left their family and friends heartbroken. Jay Sisodia and Digvijay Patel were also well loved by those who knew them. Their sudden loss has deeply affected their loved ones, who are struggling to come to terms with the horrifying way they lost their lives. The only survivor now faces a long road to recovery, not just physically, but emotionally. She will have to live with the trauma of that day, knowing her friends were trapped inside with no way out. As investigations continue, The focus will remain on Tesla's safety features and whether improvements need to be made. The tragedy has sparked renewed discussions about the risks of electric vehicles and whether manufacturers need to do more to ensure passengers can escape in emergencies. For now, families and friends mourn the loss of 4 young lives, taken far too soon. While the future may bring more clarity about what led to this disaster, nothing can undo the devastating loss suffered on that day. On the night of February 10, 2024, a tragic accident occurred on a remote ranch in the Texas Hill Country. Angela Chow, Chief Executive Officer of the shipping company Foremost Group and sister-in-law of Senate Minority Leader Mitch McConnell, lost her life in an unforeseen and heartbreaking turn of events. At 50 years old, Angela was a respected business leader and philanthropist, admired for her sharp intellect and leadership in the shipping industry. Angela had invited friends to her family's 900-acre ranch to celebrate the Chinese New Year. The estate was a peaceful retreat with horse stables, a swimming pool, and a guest house where her friends were staying. The day had been filled with laughter and celebration, and as the night progressed, they shared dinner and drinks. Around 11:30 p.m., Angela decided to leave the guest house and return to the main house where her son was sleeping. Instead of walking, she chose to drive the short distance in her Tesla Model X. Security footage captured her walking unsteadily toward her car, showing clear signs of intoxication. Her blood alcohol level was later found to be 0.233, about 3 times the legal limit. At 11:37 p.m., Angela got into her Tesla, but something went wrong. The vehicle moved unpredictably, lurching forward before suddenly reversing. It went over a wooden barrier and plunged into a pond on the property. The car sank rapidly, trapping Angela inside. In a panic, she called a close friend, explaining that she had accidentally reversed instead of driving forward. Water was rising inside the vehicle, and despite her efforts, she couldn't escape. Her voice grew more desperate as she realized she was running out of time. Her friends sprang into action. One jumped into a kayak, paddling toward the sinking car while another swam, trying to reach her. They climbed onto the vehicle, doing everything they could to free Angela, but the water was rising too quickly. Deputies arrived at midnight, but by then, the car had been submerged for over 20 minutes. The ranch manager told them the back door was open, but they struggled to reach Angela. Breaking the windshield failed, so they attempted the driver's side window. Finally, a deputy managed to pull her from the car with help from a medic. Emergency responders performed cardiopulmonary resuscitation in a desperate attempt to save her, but it was too late. Angela was pronounced dead at 1:40 a.m. The accident was a devastating loss for her family, friends, and colleagues. Angela was known for her visionary leadership at Foremost Group, where she was a trailblazer for women in the shipping industry. She was deeply respected for her compassion toward her employees and her commitment to philanthropy. She co-chaired the Asian American Foundation's Advisory Council, working to support the Asian American and Pacific Islander communities. Her father, Dr. James S.C. Chow, described her as a thoughtful and dedicated leader who made a lasting impact. Angela was also a devoted mother, wife, sister, and aunt. Her husband, venture capitalist Jim Breyer, was heartbroken, along with the rest of her family, including her sister Elaine Chow, former United States Secretary of Transportation. Just days before the accident, Angela had enjoyed a concert and quality time with friends, making her sudden loss even more shocking. The tragedy was compounded by the remote location of the ranch, which delayed rescue efforts. Despite the quick response from her friends and authorities, it wasn't enough to save her. Angela's passing resonated beyond her personal and professional circles. Her connection to political leadership brought widespread attention to the incident. While alcohol played a role, authorities confirmed it was an unfortunate accident, leaving those who knew her to mourn both the circumstances of her passing and the loss of an inspiring leader. Though she is gone, Angela Chow's influence in business, philanthropy, and the lives of those who loved her will not be forgotten. January 2022 in Voula, a seaside suburb south of Athens, Greece. Zortsis Manoios, a 45-year-old businessman from Mykonos, had just picked up his brand-new red Ferrari 488 which cost around £250,000. It was a car he'd looked forward to owning, a sleek, powerful machine. That evening he took it for a drive for the first time. His wife, Athena Kontopanou, was in the passenger seat. Zortzis wasn't just a businessman, he was well known across Greece. Back in 2003, at age 23, he appeared on the Greek version of the reality show The Wall. At the time, he was a computer science student. His calm demeanor and appearance made him stand out. He even had a brief relationship with fellow contestant Sissi Giannakopoulou, which didn't last long but kept him in the public's memory. After his time on television, Zortzis moved back to Mykonos and launched his own clothing brand, Georgi, opening 2 stores. The business took off, and he became a familiar figure both to locals and tourists. He and Athena had 2 children and lived a quiet family life. But that night, things went terribly wrong. Just 3 kilometers, or under 2 miles, from where he picked up the car, Zortzis was driving along Constantinou Karamanli Street, close to Pigodakia. The road there is coastal and narrow in places. At some point, he reportedly tried to avoid a pedestrian. In doing so, he lost control of the vehicle. The Ferrari veered off the road and slammed into a tree. Witnesses said the engine roared loudly just before impact. The crash crushed the front of the car, and it caught fire immediately. Greek singer Stan, who had been driving behind them, saw the crash happen. He rushed to help. Athena had been partially thrown from the car and was close enough to be pulled away. Stan managed to get her out just before the fire spread. She collapsed nearby, seriously injured. Zortzis, however, was still inside. A relative following in another car also ran to help but couldn't reach him. The flames had spread too fast. Zortzis was trapped behind the wheel and couldn't be saved. Video footage taken by bystanders and later shared by Greek news sites showed the Ferrari completely engulfed in flames, reduced to blackened metal in seconds. The drive had lasted only minutes. Emergency services responded quickly. Firefighters put out the fire and recovered Zortzis' remains. Athena was taken to the General State Hospital of Nicaea. She survived, but her injuries were serious. Police began an investigation right away. They reviewed nearby camera footage and reconstructed the events leading up to the crash. There was no evidence of another vehicle being involved. Early reports suggested Zortzis may have reacted to avoid someone on the road, and the Ferrari's power, combined with his inexperience behind its wheel, might have played a role. The crash left a deep impact on the country. Zortzis' sister, Katerina Monogios, a member of parliament with the New Democracy Party, received countless messages of support. People remembered Zortzis not just for his time on television or his business, but for who he was. Some reports claimed Zortzis was thrown from the car. Others said he was trapped inside. What's certain is that the Ferrari was destroyed in seconds and he didn't survive. Athena lived thanks to the efforts of those who rushed to help. Her condition remained uncertain in the early days, but she pulled through. 3 years later, Katerina spoke publicly. She said their family was focused on raising their children with memories of who he was, gentle, calm, and well-loved. The investigation is still open, but the early findings suggest that no other car was involved. Just a moment of reaction, a powerful car, and a road that didn't allow for mistakes. It was September 2023 in Sardinia, Italy. A group of wealthy tourists was driving through the countryside near the small town of San Giovanni Suergiu. They were part of the Sardinia Supercar Experience, a luxury rally where participants drive Ferraris and Lamborghinis through scenic areas and stay in upscale resorts. Among the group was a red Ferrari Portofino carrying 67-year-old Marcus Krautley and his 63-year-old wife, Melissa. The couple were from Wallisellen near Zurich, Switzerland. Marcus was the head of a logistics company with offices in Switzerland, Belgium, and Portugal. Melissa worked in human resources at the same firm. The two loved traveling luxury and fast cars. This rally, which cost between £10,000 and £21,000 to join, was one of many adventures they had done together. Also in the group was a blue Lamborghini Huracan, driven by Indian billionaire Vikas Oberoi, the head of Oberoi Realty, a company that develops luxury properties and hotels in India. His net worth is estimated to be $3.6 billion. His wife, Gayatri Joshi, a Bollywood actress best known for her role in Swades, was in the passenger seat. On that day, the group was driving north from Fort Village to Morris along the 195 Sulsatana State Road, a narrow two-lane route through rural Sardinia. What was supposed to be a smooth drive soon turned into a deadly accident. A German police officer on vacation captured dashcam footage that showed what happened. A white camper van was ahead of the supercars, slowing them down. Some of the convoy's drivers had already been seen ignoring traffic rules earlier that day. The narrow road left little room for safe overtaking, but the drivers seemed impatient. The video shows the Lamborghini attempting to pass the camper. At the same moment, Marcus in the Ferrari tried to pass both vehicles from behind. The Lamborghini swerved into the Ferrari's path. The two cars collided. The Lamborghini hit the camper van, flipping it onto its side and blocking both lanes. The Ferrari veered off the road, hit a grassy embankment, and burst into flames. Thick smoke rose into the air. The fire quickly spread, trapping Marcus and Melissa inside. Witnesses said they heard screaming. Emergency responders, including firefighters and an air ambulance, arrived quickly. But the fire had already destroyed the vehicle. Marcus and Melissa did not survive. Photos from the crash site show the Ferrari upside down and burned beyond recognition. The Lamborghini had landed at the bottom of a slope surrounded by dust and smoke. The camper van lay on its side across the road. Inside the van were a 61-year-old man named Lorenzo and his 62-year-old wife. They were tourists from northern Italy. After the crash, they found themselves sideways in their seats. The couple managed to crawl out and were later treated for non-life-threatening injuries. Vikas Oberoi and Gayatri Joshi were uninjured. Gayatri was seen sitting on the ground crying, while Vika stood nearby in shock. Police began investigating immediately. All three vehicles, the Lamborghini, the Ferrari, and the camper van, were seized for examination. The dashcam footage given by the German officer became a key part of the case. It showed the Lamborghini crossing a solid white line, which in Italy means overtaking is not allowed. Though Vikas Oberoi had not been formally charged, prosecutors placed him under investigation for what Italian law calls double road homicide. If found responsible, he could face up to 7 years in prison. He was not barred from leaving Italy and returned to India shortly after the crash. Footage posted online later showed other rally drivers running red lights and ignoring traffic laws, suggesting that unsafe behavior was common during the event. The Sardinia Supercar experience is marketed as a high-end driving tour. Participants either bring their own luxury cars or rent one. For Marcus and Melissa, what began as an exciting trip ended in tragedy. The crash destroyed 3 vehicles, took 2 lives, and left others traumatized. Investigators are still working to determine exactly who was responsible. It was the early morning of March 18, 2012 in Beijing, China. The streets were mostly quiet, but on the North 4th Ring Road, a major highway, a crash occurred that would spark major controversy. A black Ferrari 458 Spider was speeding down the road. Inside were 3 young people. The driver, 23-year-old Ling Gu, was the only son of Ling Jihua, one of the most powerful officials in China and a close aide to then-President Hu Jintao. With him were 2 women, reportedly either partially or not clothed. Some speculated they were engaged in intimate activity when Ling lost control. The Ferrari hit a wall at high speed near Baofuzi Bridge. Ling Gu died at the scene. One of the women also passed away, while the other survived with life-changing injuries, becoming paralyzed from the neck down. First responders had trouble identifying the victims due to the crash's severity, but it quickly became clear this was no ordinary accident. Soon after, a photo of the wrecked Ferrari was published in the Beijing Evening News and began circulating online. Users on Chinese social media started asking who the driver was and how such a high-end car ended up in such a crash. But not long after those posts appeared, they started disappearing. Government censors began removing any mention of the crash. Searches for terms like Ferrari, Little Ling, or Prince Ling came up empty. Behind the scenes, officials were trying to hide what had happened. Ling Gu's name was changed on official documents, possibly using the surname Jia, which sounds like fake in Mandarin. This caused more confusion since Jia was also the surname of another senior official who was reportedly upset by the rumors. Ling Jihua, the father, was allegedly shown the body but denied it was his son. Reports claimed he tried to use his influence over state security to manage the situation. One source said he contacted Zhou Yongkang, head of China's legal and political affairs, asking for help in covering up the incident. Although the government stayed quiet, political circles in Beijing knew what had happened. Ling Gu had crashed a $500,000 Ferrari while accompanied by two women. The public began asking how someone from a modestly paid government family could afford such a car. The timing couldn't have been worse. China was just weeks away from a major leadership shift. President Hu was stepping down and Xi Jinping was preparing to take over. Ling Jihua had been expected to rise into the Politburo, China's top decision-making group. But 5 months after the crash, in August 2012, he was quietly removed from his powerful role and reassigned. His new job, while still important, was clearly a step down. Hong Kong's South China Morning Post was the first to break the silence, confirming Ling Gu's death. Global media soon picked up the story. Though some foreign outlets reported unconfirmed and sensitive details about the crash, Chinese media remained silent. The story triggered outrage online. Many saw it as another example of the privileged lifestyles enjoyed by the children of high-ranking officials. Despite their parents earning modest official salaries, around $8,000 a year, these young adults were often seen in luxury cars and expensive clothing. Reports surfaced that the families of the two women were offered money to stay quiet. One claim said the funds came from an oil company executive with political ties. Efforts were also made online to discredit the story using fake accounts. But by then, it was too late to control. Back in China, the crash was never officially acknowledged. But people continued to talk about it, quietly. Ling Gu's classmates were shocked. One roommate said they had planned to attend graduate school together, but after the crash, he never saw him again. There were no public statements, no national mourning, just silence. Still, the black Ferrari crash remains one of the most talked about cases in recent Chinese political history, an event where power, secrecy, and privilege all collided. It was June 22, 2019, in Glengarry, a quiet suburb in Adelaide, South Australia. 15-year-old Sophia Naismith was walking with her best friend Jordan Kalia along Morfett Road. It was a regular evening, but just before 10 p.m. things took a tragic turn. Sophia was a student at Brighton Secondary School. She was known for her kindness, drive, and school spirit. She played volleyball and had been chosen to represent South Australia in a national tournament set for August. Her parents, Pia Vogren and Luke Naismith, were proud of all she had accomplished. That night, as Sophia and Jordan passed the House of Tea and Chinese restaurant, a white Lamborghini Huracan suddenly veered off the road, jumped the curb, and struck them before crashing into the building. The car was driven by 37-year-old Alexander Campbell. He had owned the Lamborghini, valued at $330,000 for just 4 months. It had custom plates that read Psycho. On this night, he was driving in sports mode, a setting that increases the vehicle's power and disables key safety systems, including electronic stability control. Sophia died at the scene. Jordan was seriously injured and taken to Flinders Medical Center. From her hospital bed, she posted a tribute to Sophia on Instagram, writing, "You will be forever loved and never forgotten." The tragedy shook the community. Flowers and messages were left at the site. Around 2,000 people later attended a public memorial for Sophia. Her school described her as a popular and vibrant student. Support was offered to students and staff as the city mourned. Authorities launched an investigation. Prosecutors said Campbell knew what disabling the safety systems meant, especially in such a powerful car on a cold road. They believed he had already lost control of the car earlier that same drive. Campbell was charged with causing death by dangerous driving. But 3 years later, during a judge-alone trial, he was found not guilty of that charge. The court said it wasn't proven beyond a reasonable doubt that he had accelerated dangerously. Instead, he pleaded guilty to a lesser charge, aggravated driving without due care. During sentencing, the court confirmed that Campbell had knowingly disabled the car's safety systems and used a mode that made it harder to control. The judge, Paul Muscat, said this was more than just a brief mistake. It showed serious carelessness. Still, Campbell did not receive prison time. In February 2021, he was given a suspended sentence of 4 months and 27 days due to his early guilty plea. He was also ordered to do community service and placed on an 18-month good behavior bond. His driving license was suspended for 4 years and 4 months, though some of that time had already passed while he was on bail. Outside court, Sophia's mother called the sentence sickening. Her father said they would focus on pushing for changes in the law, and they succeeded. In the following years, new laws were introduced in South Australia under the name Sophia's Law. These included fines up to $5,000 for disabling safety features in powerful vehicles. A new offense was created for causing harm or death through careless driving, which can lead to up to 7 years in prison. Police were also given more authority to suspend licenses on the spot, and soon, drivers will need a special license to operate ultra-high-powered vehicles. Volleyball SA also honored Sophia by launching the Sophia Naismith SA Spirit Award in 2023. It celebrates young athletes who show compassion, teamwork, and dedication, all values Sophia was known for. The first recipient was Zephyr Bruce, who continued to support her teammates even after being injured. Sophia's parents personally handed her the award. Sophia's life was cut short during a walk with her best friend. A man in a powerful car made dangerous choices, and the justice system couldn't fully hold him responsible. But her family's fight for change has helped reshape the law, ensuring her legacy lives on. 10th, 2025, in northern Spain. A British couple, aged 78 and 58, were driving a black Ferrari 488 GTB along the mountainous N621 highway in Leon. They were part of a group of around 20 British Ferrari owners traveling together as part of a high-end rally. The car, worth over $400,000, could reach speeds up to 205 miles per hour. This wasn't just a sightseeing trip. It was a carefully planned event for luxury car enthusiasts. The N621 is known both for its beautiful mountain scenery and for being dangerous. The road runs through steep terrain with sharp turns, sudden drops, and narrow stretches. While it offers amazing views, it requires extra attention, especially in a high-performance car like the Ferrari 488 GTB. The group had arrived in the city of Leon the day before. Everyone was looking forward to a scenic weekend drive. But by early afternoon on May 10th, things went terribly wrong. At 1:47 p.m., emergency services were alerted. A vehicle had gone off the road and fallen into the Uso River. Witnesses reported that it lost control on a curve and disappeared over the edge. The car landed upside down in shallow water, with 2 people trapped inside. First responders rushed to the scene. The civil guard arrived quickly, followed by firefighters and medical teams. The area was difficult to reach. Dense trees, underbrush, and uneven ground surrounded the river. Firefighters had to cut through the vegetation to get close. When they reached the Ferrari, it was heavily damaged. The roof had collapsed, and the car was flipped, resting halfway submerged in the river. Debris was scattered across the area. Rescue teams worked for more than 6 hours to reach and recover the car and its occupants. Emergency crews had to remove the doors to safely take the bodies out. Only after that was the car turned upright. It was a slow and difficult process due to the damage and the setting. Though the names of the couple were not released, officials confirmed they were British. The vehicle had a UK license plate, and they were part of the rally. Witnesses said the Ferrari had been speeding shortly before the crash and was alone at the time. No other cars were involved. Investigators haven't determined the exact cause. Some believe the car may have lost control on a turn. Others suggested the driver may have suffered a sudden health issue. A local expert noted that a car with 700 horsepower demands careful handling, especially on roads like the N621. Photos from the scene showed the wrecked Ferrari in the quiet river, surrounded by greenery. The stillness of the water stood in contrast to the violence of the crash. Emergency workers described the recovery as emotionally difficult. Spending hours in the river, trying to retrieve 2 people who couldn't be saved, left a strong impact. The UK's Foreign, Commonwealth and Development Office confirmed the deaths and said they were assisting the victims' families. By the next day, the story had made headlines across Europe. Reactions poured in online, from shock to condolences. Authorities are still reviewing the scene, the road conditions, and the car itself. It's unclear whether the couple passed away from the impact or from being stuck underwater. This wasn't the first tragic accident involving British tourists in Spain. Just months earlier, a woman had been seriously injured in Menorca, and 2 men died in a separate crash involving a speedboat. But this accident stood out. A scenic rally, a powerful car, and a challenging road all came together in the worst way. The Ferrari was removed from the river later that evening, and investigations are ongoing. Whatever caused the crash, whether it was the road, speed, or something else, 2 lives were lost. For the people who knew them, and for the emergency crews who tried to help, this road will now be remembered for something far more tragic than its beauty. After midnight on March 11, 2009, in Newport Beach, California, the streets were quiet until the sounds of 2 engines broke the silence. Driving at nearly 100 miles per hour were 2 cars, a white 1977 Porsche and a red Ferrari 360 Challenge Stradale. Behind the Porsche was 53-year-old Jeffrey David Kirby. Driving the Ferrari was Charles Mask Lewis Jr., co-founder of Tapu Tea, one of the biggest brands in mixed martial arts. Charles wasn't a professional fighter, but he was deeply involved in MMA. Born on June 23, 1963, he came from a humble background and had a vision for the sport long before it became popular. In 1997, he and 2 friends, Dan Punkass Caldwell and Tim Skyscrape Katz, started selling t-shirts out of the back of a rundown Mustang. That small start grew into Tapu Tea, a brand that would go on to sponsor fighters and help MMA gain mainstream recognition. By 2007, Tapu Tea was earning more than $22 million each year. Charles, known for wearing face paint and his bold personality, was also known as generous and loyal. He wasn't just selling clothing, he was supporting fighters who had little to no financial help. People like Dana White and Joe Rogan later said that MMA wouldn't be where it is today without Charles. On that night, shortly before 1:00 a.m., Charles was driving his red Ferrari through Newport Beach. His 23-year-old girlfriend, Lacey Lynn White, was in the passenger seat. Witnesses said Charles and Kirby were driving aggressively, weaving in and out of traffic in what looked like a high-speed chase. Kirby had been drinking that night. 2 hours after the crash, his blood alcohol level was still almost twice the legal limit. He also had 2 past convictions for driving under the influence, including one from 2002. As they sped down the road, Kirby lost control of his car and crashed into Charles's Ferrari. The Ferrari hit a curb and slammed into a concrete light pole. The damage was extreme. The Ferrari broke in half. The front of the car remained near the pole. The back half flew nearly 30 feet down the road. Charles was trapped inside. Emergency crews arrived, but he was pronounced dead at the scene. Lacey was thrown from the car and landed on a dirt embankment. She survived, but had serious injuries, including fractures and cuts. Kirby fled and parked his Porsche a quarter-mile away. Police found and arrested him later that night. He was charged with gross vehicular while under the influence and fleeing the scene of a fatal crash. Toxicology reports confirmed that Charles had no substances in his system. He didn't drink or use anything, and those close to him had always said the same. Kirby, on the other hand, had clearly been impaired. During the trial, Kirby's lawyer tried to say that Charles had also been speeding, but the jury saw through it. Kirby was found guilty and faced up to 13 years in prison. Charles's death shook the MMA community. He wasn't just a businessman. He was a mentor and a friend. UFC fighters like Chuck Liddell and Josh Barnett had lived with him during tough times in their careers. Dana White said, "We loved him." Zuffa CEO Lorenzo Fertitta added that Charles helped many fighters stay afloat financially. A public memorial was held on April 14, 2009 in Garden Grove. That July, Charles was inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame, the first non-fighter to receive that honor. His name was placed inside the octagon. Through Tapu Tea's reality show, he had introduced future stars like Donald Cowboy Cerrone to millions. He gave his time and money, often with no return. In 1999, Tapu Tea made $30,000. By 2008, that number had passed $100 million. Despite the success, Charles stayed focused on people. His motto was simple: simply believe. Charles Lewis Jr. died at the height of his influence. His legacy still lives on in the sport he helped build and the fighters he believed in. May 18, 2024, in Pune, India, Vedant Agarwal, a 17-year-old from a wealthy builder's family, had just finished his final high school exams. That night he went out to celebrate with friends. By the next morning, 2 people were dead, and a much deeper story had begun to unfold. One involving privilege, influence, and an effort to dodge accountability. Vedant and his friends first went to Kosi, a bar in Koregaon Park, around 10:30 p.m. Even though they were all underage, they were served alcohol. They drank until midnight, spending 48,000 rupees, paid with Vedant's grandfather's credit card. When Kosi stopped serving them, they moved to Black Club inside Marriott Suites and spent another 20,000 rupees. By 1:22 a.m. they had left. Despite being extremely intoxicated and having a driver with him, Vedant insisted on driving his father's unregistered Porsche Taycan Turbo S. Around 2:30 a.m., while speeding through the Kalyani Nagar junction at nearly 200 kilometers per hour, he hit a motorbike carrying 2 24-year-old IT professionals, Anish Awadia and Ashwini Koshta. Ashwini died instantly. Anish was rushed to a hospital but didn't survive. The Porsche was destroyed on impact. Witnesses said there were no brake marks at the scene. Locals pulled Vedant from the car and handed him over to the police. But things quickly took a strange turn. Within 50 minutes, a politician named Sunil Tingray arrived at the station. He had been called by Vedant's father, Vishal Agarwal, a well-known developer. Shortly after, the police's handling of the case began to raise eyebrows. Vedant wasn't tested for alcohol right away. His test was delayed by more than 8 hours, enough time for substances to leave his system. He was taken to Sassoon Hospital around 9 o'clock a.m., but the sample wasn't collected until 11 o'clock a.m. Reports also claimed he was given pizza and burgers while in custody, though police denied this. Later, it was revealed that the blood sample didn't belong to Vedant. It had allegedly been swapped with his mother's. This led to the arrest of hospital staff and others. Vedant appeared before the Juvenile Justice Board and was released the same day. His bail conditions included writing a short essay on road safety, visiting a police station for 15 days, attending counseling, and getting treatment for his alcohol use. The public was outraged. A minor with no license had caused the deaths of 2 people and was let off lightly. On May 20th, Deputy Chief Minister Devendra Fadnavis visited Pune and called for Vedant to be tried as an adult. More arrests followed. Vedant's father was charged under the Juvenile Justice Act for allowing him to drive and for encouraging his behavior. His grandfather, aged 77, was also arrested for allegedly confining the driver and trying to force him to take the blame. 2 senior doctors, Dr. Ajay Tawari and Dr. Srihari Halnor, were arrested for switching Vedant's blood sample. Investigators found that other people were involved in swapping samples for Vedant and his friends. A man named Arun Kumar Singh was arrested for helping cover up the events. 2 more individuals had even offered their own blood samples to pass them off as those of the boys. Eventually, a 900-page charge sheet was filed, detailing how 7 people helped manipulate evidence. The bars that served the group were shut down, and other illegal clubs in the area were demolished. Vedant's bail was later canceled, and he was sent to an observation home until June 5th. Authorities pressed more serious charges, including those related to causing death through negligence. 2 officers were suspended, and the police commissioner launched an investigation into how Vedant received special treatment. The story drew nationwide attention. Even public figures shared past experiences with Vedant, accusing him of being a school bully whose behavior had long gone unchecked. Protests and criticism poured in. Rahul Gandhi called out the justice system for treating the rich differently. Despite efforts to cover things up, public pressure kept the case alive. On May 25th, after a petition from Vedant's aunt, the Bombay High Court ordered him released into her custody. Then, on July 26th, the Pune police officially filed their detailed charge sheet. 2 members of the Juvenile Justice Board were later removed for irregularities in how the bail was handled. In the end, the deaths of Anish and Ashwini exposed how deeply influence can twist justice. Their families are still waiting for truth, for answers, and for real consequences.